The billionaire's little boy had never taken a single step in his life. Every doctor, every specialist, every test said the same thing. His legs did not work and no one knew why. But one afternoon inside that giant glass mansion on the hill, a poor little girl from the servants' quarters picked up a crumpled paper, read a single line, and realized something so shocking about the boy's condition that her small hands started shaking. If what she had just discovered was true, then Leo might not be paralyzed the way everyone believed, and someone in that house had been hiding a terrible secret for years. Before we get into this story, pause for a second, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and let's dive in together. Jackson Reed was the kind of man people only saw on TV. His face was on business magazines and airport lounges, his name flashed under breaking news when the stock market moved, and his glass mansion sat high above the city like a shining crown. Inside that mansion, everything was perfect. The marble floors, the soft white rugs, the huge staircase, the giant windows that let the sun pour in every morning, everything looked like a dream. But there was one room where the air always felt heavy, where laughter never lasted long. That was Leo's room. Leo was 7 years old. He had bright hazel eyes, soft brown hair that curled a little at the ends, and a smile that could light up the whole house when he forgot to be sad. But he spent almost all his time in a sleek black wheelchair, his thin legs lying still on the footrest. He had never run in the yard, he had never climbed the stairs, he had never jumped on his bed even when he really wanted to. The doctors said something was wrong with his nerves, but they could not agree on what. Some tests said one thing, others said another, and after a while they just started shrugging. He was born this way, they always said. You should be grateful he's alive. Jackson tried to listen. He hired the best doctors, paid for the best machines, flew specialists in from other countries. They took blood from Leo, scanned his brain, pressed cold tools against his knees. Every time they tested his legs, they shook their heads. No response. It broke Jackson's heart, but he kept his face strong. He did not like to cry in front of his son. He thought he had to be the rock, the strong wall, the unshakable father. So when Leo asked, "Dad, will I ever walk?" Jackson would swallow the lump in his throat and answer, "We're going to keep trying, buddy. I promise. I'm not giving up." Downstairs in a tiny two-room space near the back of the house, lived a maid named Rosa and her 8-year-old daughter, Kayla. Their room had no marble, no fancy rugs. The walls were plain and the bed squeaked when you sat on it, but they kept it clean. Rosa worked from early morning until late at night, cleaning, washing, ironing, and helping the cook. She had kind eyes, tired hands, and a soft voice that always said thank you even when no one noticed her. Kayla was the opposite of quiet. She was small and skinny, with warm brown skin, big curious eyes, and tight curls she liked to tie back with a red ribbon. She asked questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Why does the elevator make that sound? Why does Mr. Jackson always look sad when he comes down from the doctor room? Rosa would sometimes sigh and put a finger to her lips. "Kayla, baby, we don't ask questions like that out loud," she whispered. "We just do our work, say thank you, and mind our business. Rich people have problems we don't understand." But Kayla did not like that answer. She might be poor, but she was not blind. She saw things. She noticed every time Jackson passed the big family portrait in the hallway and turned his head away. She noticed how the boy in the wheelchair, Leo, always watched other kids on TV running in the park, his fingers gripping the armrest just a little tighter. She noticed how Jackson's mother, Mrs. Reed, whom everyone called Madam, would press her lips together whenever Leo laughed too loud. Madam was the one who had hired Rosa. She was tall and thin, with neat gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore pearls even in the morning and spoke in short, cold sentences. She believed in order, rules, control. To her, the house was not a home, it was a machine that needed to run without mistakes. She did not like mess, she did not like noise, and she did not like anything she could not control. And Leo's condition, no answer, no clear cause, no simple fix, was something she could not control at all. "Remember your place," Madam told Rosa the day she moved in. They were standing near the kitchen, the smell of fresh bread in the air. "You clean, you stay out of sight, and you never get involved in family matters. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Rosa replied, eyes down. "And your daughter?" Madam's eyes slid to Kayla, who was holding her mother's hand and staring at the huge chandelier like it was a galaxy. "She will stay with me and help when needed. She's a good girl," Rosa said. "Children are trouble," Madam muttered. "See that she does not bother Leo, he has enough to deal with." But life, as usual, had its own ideas. The first time Leo and Kayla met, it was an accident. It happened one rainy afternoon when thunder growled outside and the power flickered for a moment. Rosa had gone upstairs to change the sheets in Leo's room. Kayla was supposed to stay in the small staff hallway, but she got bored. The rain on the big windows looked like silver strings, and she wanted to see the view from the top floor. So she slipped out, her small feet quiet on the rug, and followed the soft sound of music coming from a half-open door. Inside the room, Leo sat by the window in his wheelchair wearing a blue t-shirt and gray sweatpants. A tablet rested on his lap playing a cartoon, but he wasn't really watching it. His eyes were on the rain, his face thoughtful. He didn't hear Kayla at first. She stood in the doorway, staring at the model airplanes hanging from his ceiling, the shelves filled with books and toys, the big flat-screen TV on the wall. It looked like a toy store and a dream glued together. Then the floor creaked. Leo turned. Their eyes met. For a second, both of them froze. Kayla's cheeks warmed. "Sorry," she blurted. I was just looking, I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Leo said quickly. His voice was soft but kind. "Everyone else knocks, it's weird to see someone just walk in." "I'm not supposed to be up here," Kayla admitted, fingers twisting her red ribbon. "My mom works here, we live downstairs, I'm Kayla." "I'm Leo," he said. He pushed the tablet aside and gave a little half-smile. "I live up here." He glanced around his room as if he was not sure whether to call it home or a cage. Kayla stepped inside, closing the door halfway behind her. "Your room is cool," she said honestly. "You have so many planes, do you fly them?" "Just with my hands," Leo said, trying to joke. His smile faded as his eyes dropped to his legs. "My legs don't work, I was born like this." Kayla's eyes moved slowly from his face to the wheelchair, then to his legs. "Oh," she said softly. There was no pity in her voice, only surprise and sadness. "Does it hurt?" "Sometimes," he replied. "Not my legs, just here," he tapped his chest. "When I want to run, but I can't." Kayla's eyebrows drew together. "The doctors can't fix it." Leo shook his head. "They tried, they say it's just how I am. Grandma says I should accept it and be grateful. Dad says we'll keep looking for answers." "What do you think?" Kayla asked. No one had ever asked him that. For a moment, Leo just stared at her. "I think," he hesitated, "I think something is wrong that they're not seeing. Sometimes at night I feel, I don't know, like my legs are still there, like they're not totally gone, like if I try hard enough maybe." He stopped, embarrassed. "It's stupid." Kayla shook her head. "It's not stupid. My mom says sometimes our bodies talk in ways doctors don't understand." "Your mom sounds nice," Leo said. "She is," Kayla replied, a little proud. "She says God sees everything, even the things people pretend are normal." Before Leo could answer, the door opened wider and Rosa rushed in, her eyes wide with fear. "Kayla, what did I tell you?" she hissed, grabbing her daughter's arm gently but firmly. "You can't just walk into the family rooms." "I'm sorry, Mom," Kayla gasped. "I was just talking to him." Rosa turned to Leo, her face worried. "I'm very sorry, sir, she won't bother you again." Leo's heart sank. "She wasn't bothering me," he said quickly. "I liked talking to her." Rosa hesitated. She had seen the lonely look in Leo's eyes before, but rules were rules. Madam's words echoed in her mind. "Stay out of family matters. Do not let your daughter near the boy." "It's not my decision," she said softly. "Come, Kayla." As they left, Leo watched them go, his fingers tightening on the armrest. For the first time in a long time, someone his age had talked to him like he was normal, and just like that, it was taken away. Downstairs, Rosa scolded Kayla in a low, shaking voice, not because she was truly angry but because she was scared. "Do you want us to lose this job?" she whispered. "Do you know how hard it was for me to get this place? We have food, a roof, school for you. Please don't break the rules." Kayla's eyes filled with tears. "But Mom, he's lonely," she said. "He told me his legs don't work but his heart does. Doesn't that matter?" Rosa sighed and pulled her into a hug. Of course it matters, she murmured, but sometimes love and kindness have to be quiet when you're poor. That's the sad part of life. Upstairs, another conversation was happening. Jackson stood in his study holding a report from yet another specialist. His tie was loose, his eyes tired. Madam stood by the window, her arms crossed. Another one who has no answers, Jackson said bitterly, dropping the papers on his desk. Do you know how much this cost? And he still talks in circles. Maybe this, maybe that. I'm sick of maybes. You should stop wasting your money, Madam replied sharply. We have done enough. The boy is alive. That is what matters. What matters is that he is my son, Jackson shot back. I will not stop looking for a way to help him. Madam's eyes cooled. You are chasing ghosts, Jackson. There is nothing wrong with him that we can fix. Jackson stared at her, something strange passing across his face. Sometimes I feel like you know more than you say, he muttered. Since the day he was born, you've been different. You were the first to hold him. You spoke to the doctors before I did, and every time I bring a new specialist, you act like I'm doing something wrong. You are tired, Madam said simply. Grief makes you imagine things. Go rest. But as she turned away, her fingers tightened around the pearl necklace at her throat, and for a second, a flicker of guilt flashed in her eyes. Days passed, then weeks. Leo and Kayla did not see each other again in his room, but the house was big and children are good at finding paths. Sometimes Kayla would walk past the garden just as Leo's nurse wheeled him outside for some fresh air. Sometimes she would be dusting the hallway when he rolled by. They started to exchange small smiles, then little waves, then tiny whispers. Hi, Leo would say. Hi, Kayla would whisper back. One morning, when the nurse stepped away to answer a call, Leo rolled his chair closer to the garden gate where Kayla was helping her mom water the flowers. Do you like stories? He asked, voice a bit shaky. Kayla's eyes lit up. I love stories, she said. My mom tells me some at night, but she's always so tired. I have a lot of books, Leo said. Maybe I could lend you some, and you could tell me stories too, about your life. I've never been to a small apartment or a crowded bus. I only see them from the car window. Kayla laughed softly. There's not much to see, just people, noise, and sweat, she said, but maybe I can tell you anyway. Rosa noticed their whispering and felt fear pinch her heart again, but when she saw the way Leo's face lit up, something inside her softened. She remembered what it felt like to be a lonely child herself. She didn't call Kayla away this time. She just watered the flowers and pretended not to hear. As the months went on, Leo and Kayla slowly became secret friends. She would sneak little drawings she made on old receipts and leave them behind a flower pot near the garden. He would give her small snacks from the kitchen when no one was watching. In return, she told him stories of their life before the mansion, about tiny rooms, the smell of fried plantain from the neighbor's pan, the way people laughed loudly in the street even when they had nothing. One day, I'm going to walk, Leo said one afternoon as they watched the sun sink behind the trees. I don't know how, but I feel it. Kayla looked at him, then at his legs resting still on the chair. You ever try to move them? She asked. Leo shook his head, embarrassed. The doctors say there's no point, he replied. They say there's no signal going from my brain to my legs. But that's what they say, Kayla answered. What do you say? Leo opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer, and that scared him more than anything. One night, a storm rolled over the city. Lightning cracked the sky, thunder boomed, and rain hammered on the roof of the mansion. The lights flickered twice and then went out. The whole house fell into darkness, broken only by the pale glow of emergency lights in the hallways. Great, one of the guards grumbled somewhere near the front door. The generator again. In the staff room, Rosa lit a small candle while Kayla pressed her face to the tiny window. She loved storms. They made the world feel alive and wild and loud enough to cover secrets. Stay here, Rosa told her. I have to go check the linen closet upstairs. The housekeeper wants extra blankets in case the temperature drops. Can I come? Kayla begged. No, Rosa said firmly. You'll stay right here, don't move." But when the door closed behind her mother, the quiet room felt too small. Kayla sat in the dark, listening to the thunder, and then she heard something else. A soft thud followed by a low cry from somewhere above. It sounded like a child. Her heart jumped. "Leo," she whispered. Without thinking, she grabbed the candle and slipped into the hallway, her bare feet moving fast on the cold floor. The emergency lights made the hall glow in a strange blue color, like the house was underwater. She climbed the service stairs, holding the candle close to her chest. On the second-floor landing, she heard it again. A soft, frustrated sound. It was coming from the direction of Leo's room. Kayla walked down the hallway, passing the big family portraits that now looked spooky in the half-light. She reached Leo's door. It was slightly open. She pushed it slowly. Inside, the room was dim. The nightlight near his bed was glowing faintly, and shadows danced on the walls. Leo was there, but not in his wheelchair. He was on the floor. His chair had tipped, and he lay on his back, breathing hard, eyes wide with fear. "Leo," Kayla gasped, running to his side and setting the candle on the bedside table. "What happened?" "I was trying to reach my notebook," he said, voice shaking. "The power went out and I got scared. I leaned too far and the chair flipped." He looked at his legs like they were strangers. "I tried to drag myself back, but I couldn't." Kayla reached for his hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'll help you." She hooked her arms under his shoulders and tried to pull him. He was heavier than he looked. Her muscles burned, but she didn't stop. Slowly, she managed to slide him closer to the bed. "On three," she panted. "We'll try to get you up, okay?" Leo stared at her, sweat on his forehead. "I can't stand," he said. "My legs won't hold me." "But your arms can help," she replied. "And I'll hold on, just try." Kayla braced herself, planting her feet on the floor. 1, 2, 3. She pulled. Leo pushed with his hands against the bed frame. For a split second, his body shifted in a way he wasn't used to. His toes brushed the floor. He felt something, a tiny spark like a whisper in his muscles. "Did you feel that?" he gasped. "Feel what?" Kayla asked, still pulling. "My feet," he blurted. I think I felt the floor." They both froze. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Maybe it was just your mind," Leo said quickly, scared of his own hope. "Or maybe," Kayla whispered, "it was real." She didn't push him to try again. She could see the fear in his eyes, and she knew sometimes too much hope could hurt more than none. Instead, she helped him slide back onto his wheelchair with all the strength she had, then straightened the chair and made sure he was safe. "Thank you," Leo said, his voice trembling. "If Grandma finds out I fell, she'll say this is why I shouldn't move at all." "She doesn't have to find out," Kayla replied. "This can be our secret." They shared a look that was deeper than any words. It was the look of two children who knew they were standing at the edge of something big, even if they didn't know what it was yet. A few days later, life went back to normal on the surface. The lights worked again. The staff moved around like busy bees. Madame walked through the house like a queen inspecting her kingdom. But inside Leo's mind, the storm had never left. He kept thinking about that tiny spark he had felt in his toes. Was it real? Was it just his imagination? And why did all the doctors say no hope when he had felt something that night? Meanwhile, Kayla's curiosity grew like a weed. She started paying closer attention to everything around her, the way Madame talked to the doctors, the papers she handed them, the way she always wanted to be alone with the medical reports. Once Kayla saw Madame slip a white envelope to one of the specialists at the door. The doctor took it with a stiff smile and said, "Of course, Mrs. Reed, I understand." Understand what? Kayla wondered. One quiet afternoon, when most of the staff were busy in the kitchen and Rosa had gone to the market with the cook, Kayla was sent to dust the shelves in Jackson's study. It was a large room filled with books, glass awards, and thick files. Jackson was not there. His chair sat empty behind the big desk. The room smelled like leather and paper and something else, worry maybe. "Just dust and leave," Rosa had told her. "Don't touch anything else, and if someone comes in, you walk out." Kayla tried to obey. She picked up a soft cloth and moved it over the shelves carefully. But as she worked, she noticed a stack of folders on the desk. The top one had Leo's name on it, written in bold letters. Under his name were words she didn't understand, but one phrase stood out. Initial report, normal nerve response. Normal. That word hit her like lightning. She looked around. The hallway outside was quiet, her heart pounded. Slowly she stepped closer to the desk. The folder was slightly open. Just one look, she told herself, then I'll go. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the cover. Inside were pages full of doctor notes and printed test results. The first report, dated right after Leo's birth, had a handwritten line at the bottom: leg reflexes present, no sign of paralysis at this time. Kayla's eyes widened. No sign of paralysis, but everyone said he was born paralyzed. Her stomach twisted. She flipped to the next page. A second report, dated a few weeks later, told a very different story. Patient shows no leg reflexes, possible congenital nerve damage, condition likely permanent. At the bottom of that page, in smaller writing, was another note: see instructions from family. Instructions from family. The room suddenly felt smaller. Kayla swallowed hard. She kept reading, her eyes racing over the words. It was like walking deeper into a dark tunnel. Every new page showed more tests, more confusion. Some results suggested Leo's legs had some response. Others said there was none. And on several pages there were quick little comments added in the margin in the same looping handwriting. Adjust report per request. Use softer language, no options mentioned. Family prefers no cure, conclusion for now. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Why would a family want a report to say there was no cure? Why would someone ask a doctor to make things sound worse? Just then, a soft click sounded in the hallway. Footsteps, slow, controlled, familiar. Madam. Kayla froze. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the folder. In a panic, she slipped under the massive desk, pulling the chair in slightly so her small body was hidden in the shadows. She hugged her knees and tried to quiet her breathing. The door opened, heels tapped across the floor. Kayla could see just a little from where she hid: the edge of Madam's long skirt, the slight sway of her pearl necklace as she moved. Madam sat down in the chair. Kayla was now right under her, so close she could hear her breathing. Madam flipped through the very same folder Kayla had just touched. A phone rang softly. Madam answered, yes. The voice on the other end was muffled, but Kayla could hear enough to understand it was a doctor. I got your email, Mrs. Reed, the doctor said, but I don't feel comfortable changing the wording again. The boy's latest tests show improvement. If your son... My grandson, Madam cut in sharply. Call him my grandson. Yes, of course, the doctor corrected himself. Your grandson, his muscles are showing signs of activity. We may have been wrong about the permanence of his condition. This is good news. There was a long pause. Kayla held her breath. This is not good news, Madam said finally, her voice cold as ice. You don't understand what is at stake. My son's head has never been stable when it comes to business. He is too soft, too emotional. If he thinks that boy can be fixed, he will throw every last dollar chasing miracle cures. Do you know how fast fortunes disappear when men start mixing money with hope? Mrs. Reed, I became a doctor to help people walk again, not to lie to them, the man replied carefully. I already changed the wording once. I can't keep doing this. It's wrong. You already took my money once, Madam said. Kayla could hear something being tapped on the desk, maybe her long nails, maybe a pen. You will do it again. You will send a report that says his condition is unchanged and that all attempts are useless. You will say there is nothing more to be done. But that's not true, the doctor protested. If we keep working, there's a chance he could improve. The tests prove it. Listen to me, Madam hissed, her calm mask slipping for the first time. My son cannot handle hope. Hope will make him weak. Hope will make him give away money that belongs to this family, to this company, to the generations after us. As long as he believes Leo cannot be cured, he will stay focused. He will keep building the empire that boy will one day inherit. If you tell him there's hope, he will turn into a broken father who spends his nights in hospitals instead of boardrooms. I will not allow that. Kayla felt her whole body go cold. You want the boy to stay in that chair, the doctor said slowly. I want my son to stay strong, Madam replied. If the price is that the boy stays as he is, then so be it. He is safe, he is cared for, he will live, that is enough. That is not your choice to make, the doctor whispered. Madam's voice turned even darker. If you do not send the report as I asked, I will speak to my lawyers. Your past mistakes will become very public. Your career will not survive it. Do you understand me? Silence hung in the air like a knife. Kayla's heart pounded so loudly she was sure Madam could hear it. Finally, the doctor sighed. You're asking me to lie to a father about his own child, he said. I'm asking you to protect a legacy, Madam answered. Send the report. The call ended. Madam sat there for a moment, breathing slowly. Then she closed the folder with a sharp thud and stood up. Her heels clicked across the floor again as she left the room. The door shut behind her. Under the desk, Kayla stayed frozen, every muscle shaking. She felt like the world had just cracked open. The words she had heard spun around in her head. Normal nerve response. Improvement. As long as he believes Leo cannot be cured. If the price is that the boy stays as he is. She crawled out slowly, her legs weak. She reached for the folder again with trembling fingers and stared at Leo's name on the cover. It felt heavy, like it was made of stone. Leo had always been told he was born this way, that nothing could be done, that his legs were broken from the start. But the papers, the reports, the secret call, they told a different story. A story in which someone had chosen to keep him in that chair. Someone who cared more about money and power than about a little boy's chance to walk. Tears filled Kayla's eyes. She thought of Leo's face when he said, "Sometimes I feel like my legs are still there." She thought of the tiny spark he felt when his toes touched the floor the night of the storm. She thought of Madam's cold words asking a doctor to bury the truth. She knew then, with a terrible, clear certainty, that Leo's story was not what everyone believed. He might not be paralyzed in the way they said. Something had been done, something had been hidden. Her hands clenched into fists. She was just a poor little girl from the staff quarters. She had no money, no power, no voice in this huge house. But she had something Madam did not have. She had a heart that refused to look away. I have to tell him, she whispered to herself, voice shaking. He deserves to know. But even as she said it, footsteps echoed in the hallway again, and the doorknob twisted slowly, as if someone was about to walk back in and catch her standing over the secret that could change Leo's life forever. The door handle turned so slowly that each tiny click sounded like a drum in Kayla's ears. She froze with the folder still half open in her hands. In one quick shaking movement, she slid the papers back into place, dropped the cover, and ducked under the desk again, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might jump out of her chest. The chair scraped as the door opened wider. Footsteps crossed the floor, heavier than Madam's sharp little steps, slower, tired. It wasn't Madam, it was Jackson. From under the desk, all Kayla could see were his polished shoes and the hem of his suit pants. He stopped right in front of the desk and let out a long sigh, the kind that sounded like it had been stuck inside him for years. The leather chair creaked as he sat down, papers rustled. He picked up the folder she had just dropped. Kayla pressed both hands over her mouth, afraid even her breathing would give her away. More reports, Jackson muttered softly to himself. More answers that don't say anything. He flipped the folder open. She could hear the pages sliding, then silence. A chair shift. His breathing changed, turning sharper like something had just hit him. What is this? He whispered. A paper rustled as he pulled it closer. Initial report, normal nerve response, no sign of paralysis. Kayla squeezed her eyes shut, every muscle shaking. She didn't mean for him to see that. She didn't mean to change anything yet. She had just wanted to understand. How? Jackson's voice broke. You never told me this, he whispered, but he wasn't talking to Kayla. He was talking to the memory of doctors, of meetings she had never seen. All this time you told me he was born that way. He pushed his chair back so quickly that its wheels bumped Kayla's shoulder under the desk. She gasped before she could stop herself. The sound was small, but in the quiet room it was as loud as thunder. Jackson froze. "Who's there?" he snapped. His chair rolled back again and he bent down. For a heartbeat their eyes met, his wide with surprise, hers wide with fear. "You," he said, stunned. "The little maid's girl." Kayla scrambled out from under the desk, almost tripping over her own feet. "I'm sorry, sir," she blurted, tears already gathering. "I didn't mean to, I was just cleaning, the door was open, I didn't touch anything." Jackson looked at the cloth still on the shelf, then at the open folder, then at her shaking hands. He was a smart man, he put things together quickly. "How much did you see?" he asked, his voice low, not angry but heavy. Kayla swallowed hard. She thought of lying. She thought of saying nothing and running away. But then she saw Leo in her mind, sitting in his wheelchair, staring at his legs like they were locked doors. She saw the way his face lit up when she brought him a silly drawing. She saw the way he had whispered, "Sometimes I feel like they're still there." "I saw enough," she said softly. "I saw the first report that said his legs were normal when he was born, and I heard your mom on the phone with a doctor asking him to change the results and say there was no hope." The room went silent again. Jackson's eyes, usually calm and sharp like steel, looked like glass that had just been hit by a stone. "You heard my mother?" he asked. Kayla nodded slowly. "I was hiding under the desk when she came in earlier," she admitted. "I know I shouldn't have, I'm sorry, but she told the doctor to make it sound like Leo could never get better. She said you couldn't handle hope and that you'd waste all your money if you believed he could be cured." Jackson's jaw clenched. Pain flashed across his face, then anger, then something deeper, shame maybe. He turned away for a moment, pressing his hand against his eyes. "She thinks I'm weak," he whispered. "She thinks I care about my money more than my son." "That's not what she said," Kayla replied quietly. "She said you'd lose the money if you had hope. She said the boy staying the same was the price." Jackson flinched. "The price," he repeated like the word tasted bitter. He looked back at her, really looked this time, not just as a staff child but as a person. "Why are you telling me this?" Kayla lifted her chin even though her hands were still shaking. "Because Leo is my friend," she said. "And because God is watching. My mom says he sees everything people try to hide. I think he let me hear that call for a reason." Something in Jackson's face softened just a little. "You're just a child," he said. "You shouldn't have to carry something like this." "But I do," she replied, "because no one else will." He stood up and walked to the window, folder still in his hand. The city stretched out below the glass mansion, small and far away. "If what you heard is true," he said slowly, "then someone has been lying to me about my son's life for years. Someone has let him suffer so I would stay focused on numbers." His voice cracked on the last word. "My own mother." Kayla stepped forward carefully. "Sir," she said, "I don't know much about rich people or big companies, but I know this isn't right." He turned back to her, eyes shining with unshed tears. "No," he said, "it's not." Before he could say anything else, there was another knock on the door. This time the steps were sharp, exact, familiar. "Madam." Jackson's face switched in a heartbeat. All the pain and shock disappeared behind a calm mask he had learned to wear at board meetings. He pushed the folder into a drawer and closed it just as the door opened. "Jackson," Madam said, stepping inside. She paused when she saw Kayla. Her eyes turned colder. "Why is she here?" "She was dusting," Jackson answered smoothly. "The study was on the cleaning list today, wasn't it?" Madam's gaze moved from him to Kayla, then to the shelf with the half-dusted line. She smiled a small, tight smile. "I suppose it was," she said, "but she should go back to the staff area now. Children have no business in important rooms." "Yes, ma'am," Kayla whispered. She started walking to the door, but before she left, Jackson spoke again, his voice calm but loaded with something Madam didn't catch. "It's fine," he said. "I was just finishing here anyway. We'll talk later, Mother." Madam nodded, but her eyes stayed on Kayla until the girl disappeared into the hallway. Kayla walked away as fast as she could without running, her heart still hammering. When she reached the stairs, she allowed herself one look back. Through the narrow crack of the study door, she saw mother and son standing on opposite sides of the room like two statues staring each other down. Downstairs, the world smelled like soap and onion and bread again. It felt wrong, almost rude, that life could be so normal when such a big truth was sitting upstairs like a time bomb. Kayla found her mother in the laundry room folding towels. "Mom," she whispered, grabbing Rosa's arm, "we need to talk." Rosa saw her daughter's pale face and set the towel down slowly. "What happened?" she asked. "Did someone shout at you? Did you break something?" "No," Kayla said, shaking her head. "It's about Leo and Madam and the doctor. I heard something. I saw papers." Rosa's shoulders stiffened. "Kayla," she said warningly, "you promised me you would stay away from their business." "But it's not just business," Kayla pushed on. "It's his life. They lied, Mom. They told everyone he was born paralyzed, but the first report said he was. His legs worked when he was a baby. Something happened later, and Madam is making doctors say there's no hope, so his dad doesn't spend money trying to fix it." The color drained from Rosa's face. For a second she looked like she might drop right there on the floor. "Stop," she whispered. "Please, you don't know what you're saying." "I do," Kayla insisted. "I heard her on the phone. She said hope would make him weak and ruin the family money. She's choosing money over his legs." Rosa grabbed her shoulders and pulled her into the corner, away from the doorway. "Do you know what people like that do when they feel threatened?" she whispered harshly. "They don't just fire you, they make sure no one hires you again. They can make our lives disappear like dust. We have nowhere else to go." "So we let Leo stay in that chair forever," Kayla shot back, tears spilling now. "We pretend we don't know, Mom. That's not fair. That's not what God wants." Rosa closed her eyes. For a moment she was not the tired maid in a big house. She was a young girl again, standing in a hospital hallway, listening to someone tell her there was no room for her sick father. Money first, people later. It was always the same story. "I know it's not fair," she said, her voice breaking. "But the world isn't fair, Kayla. It never has been." "Then someone has to make it fair," Kayla whispered, "at least a little." Rosa looked at her daughter's face, wet with tears, burning with a kind of fire that didn't come from anger but from love. She thought of Leo's small hands waving to them in the garden. She thought of how she had told Kayla that love sometimes had to be quiet when you were poor. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe love wasn't meant to be quiet at all. "Have you told anyone else?" Rosa asked. "I told Mr. Jackson," Kayla said. "He knows now." Rosa's eyes widened. "You told him?" "Yes," Kayla said. "He saw the first report himself. He knows they lied." Rosa sank down onto a stool, covering her face with her hands. "Lord, help us," she whispered. "We are in the middle of something much bigger than us now." Upstairs, Jackson stood at the window in his study, his hands resting on the sill. Madam was talking, her voice smooth and controlled, but he wasn't really hearing her. The words Kayla had spoken replayed in his mind with every breath. "Normal nerve response. No sign of paralysis at this time. As long as he believes there is no cure." "And the board wants an answer by the end of the month," Madam was saying. "If we move quickly, we can close the deal before the competitors even see the numbers." Jackson turned slowly. "Is that all you care about?" he asked quietly. Madam's eyebrows lifted. "What are you talking about?" "Numbers," he said. "Deals, contracts, reports. Is that all that matters to you?" "It is what keeps this family where it is," she answered. "Without it, you would still be the scared young man I met in that hospital hallway begging doctors to fix something they couldn't fix." He stared at her, and for the first time in a long time he let her see his anger. "And what if I was wrong?" he asked. "What if they could fix it and someone stopped them?" For a heartbeat, something flickered in her eyes, a memory, a fear. Then her face hardened again. "You're tired," she said. "Grief is making you think in circles again. You should rest before you make foolish decisions." He stepped closer, his voice low but sharp. "Did you ever hide anything from me about Leo's condition?" he asked. "Any report, any piece of paper, any call?" Madam lifted her chin. "Everything I did was to protect you," she said, "and to protect him from false hope. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is accept what you cannot change." "But what if it can be changed?" Jackson pushed. "What if someone decided for me that my son would never walk, not because it was true, but because it was easier for the family?" She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes unreadable. "You're not ready to hear the truth," she said finally. "One day you will thank me." She turned and walked out, leaving him standing there with the folder locked in the drawer and a storm building in his chest. That night Kayla could not sleep. She lay on the thin mattress next to her mom, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the big house. Her thoughts kept circling back to the same place, Leo. His face when he said, "I think something is wrong they're not seeing." His voice when he asked, "Do you think I'll ever walk?" She sat up. "Mom," she whispered. Rosa stirred. "I have to tell him," Kayla said. "He has a right to know they've been lying to him." Rosa opened her eyes, tired and sad. "If you tell him, he might do something foolish," she murmured. "He's just a child." "So am I," Kayla replied. "But I'm still standing. He's not. Maybe the truth will help him stand one day." Rosa looked at her for a long time, then turned her eyes to the ceiling too. "I can't stop you," she said finally. "If I do, I'll be just like them, letting a child suffer while I pretend not to see. Just be careful, my baby. Truth is heavy. Don't drop it on him all at once." The next afternoon, the sun came out after 2 days of gray clouds. The garden sparkled with drops of water on every leaf. Leo was outside near the edge of the lawn, his wheelchair parked under a big tree. His nurse had gone inside for a moment to get his jacket. Kayla walked up the path slowly, her hands sweating. Her heart felt like it was made of glass and could break with one wrong word. "Hey," Leo said when he saw her, his eyes brightened. "I thought you got in trouble or something. I didn't see you yesterday." "I almost did," she admitted, trying to smile, "but I'm still here." He watched her face. "You look weird," he said, "like you want to cry and yell at the same time." She took a deep breath and sat down on the low stone border in front of him. "Leo," she said softly, "if someone knew something important about you, something big, would you want them to tell you even if it hurt?" He frowned, thinking, "I don't like pain," he said, "but I hate being left out more, so yeah, I'd want to know." She nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. "Then I'm going to tell you something, but I swear I'm not saying it to be mean. I'm saying it because you're my friend, and because I think God wants you to hear it." He sat up a little straighter in his chair. "Okay," he said, his hand gripping the armrest. "Tell me." She looked him in the eyes, her own eyes shining. "You weren't born paralyzed," she said. "The first doctor report said your legs worked when you were a baby. Someone changed the story later. Someone has been telling your dad there's no cure when the tests say there might be a chance." Leo's face went blank. For a moment he didn't seem to understand the words, then his fingers started to tremble. "What?" he whispered. "I saw the paper in your dad's study." She explained, "It said no sign of paralysis at this time when you were born, and I heard Madam on the phone telling a doctor to write a new report that said you couldn't be helped. She wanted your dad to think there was no hope." Leo shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "No, that can't be right. Grandma has always said the doctors did everything they could, that there was nothing anyone could do, that I should accept it." "I'm not saying the doctors didn't help you," Kayla replied gently. "But someone told them how to write the story. Someone wanted the story to end with no hope even when the pages weren't finished." He swallowed hard, his eyes filled with tears. "Why would she do that?" he whispered. "She kisses my forehead at night, she buys me toys, she tells me she loves me. Why would she want me to stay like this?" Kayla's throat tightened. "I don't know everything," she said. But I heard her say your dad would waste all his money chasing a cure if he knew there was a chance. She thinks money is more important than you walking." It was like watching a glass window crack. For a moment everything in Leo's face stayed perfectly still. Then the cracks spread fast and deep, tears spilled down his cheeks. He gripped the sides of his wheelchair so hard his knuckles turned white. "So she chose this," he whispered. "She chose for me to stay in this chair, she chose it." Kayla reached out and touched his arm. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I wish it wasn't true, I wish I didn't have to be the one to say it." He jerked his arm away not in hate but because the pain inside him was too big to sit still. "Why didn't my dad know?" he demanded. "He's smart, he reads everything, how could she hide it from him?" "She controlled the papers," Kayla said, "the calls, the reports, but I told him yesterday, he saw the first one himself, he knows now." Leo's chest rose and fell in quick breaths. Hope and anger warred inside his eyes. "If there's a chance," he said, his voice shaking, "if the tests say my legs aren't completely gone, why can't I move them now?" Kayla hesitated. "Maybe because they never let you try properly," she said. "Maybe because the only thing doctors looked for was proof that you'd always stay the same." He stared down at his legs lying there on the footrest like they belonged to someone else. "What if they're dead already?" he whispered. "What if it's too late?" "Then at least you'll know the truth," she replied gently. "But what if they're not? What if there's still something there?" He closed his eyes. "I'm scared to hope," he said quietly. "It hurts. What if I try and nothing happens? I'll feel stupid." Kayla leaned closer. "You felt something the night you fell," she reminded him. "You told me your toes brushed the floor. Maybe that was real. Maybe your body has been trying to talk through the lies." He opened his eyes slowly. "Help me," he whispered. "Just help me try. If nothing happens, then fine, but if something does." She nodded, her heart pounding. She checked the garden. The nurse was still inside. No one was watching them. She looked back at Leo. "Okay," she said. "We'll try something small. We won't tell anyone yet. This will be between you, me, and God." He nodded, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. "What do I do?" "Close your eyes," she said softly. "Imagine your legs not the way they look now, but the way you'd want them to feel, strong, warm, like they belong to you. Then tell your toes to move." "It's not that simple," he said, a sad little laugh escaping. "Maybe it is, and no one ever let you try," she answered. "Just do it for you." He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. His lashes trembled against his cheeks. His hands gripped the armrests. For a long moment nothing moved. He sat there, breathing slowly, face scrunched in concentration. "Nothing," he whispered. "Try just one toe," she encouraged. "Pick one, talk to it." He almost laughed again, but then he did it. In his mind he saw his right foot, small and pale, lying still. He imagined grabbing a tiny invisible wire and connecting it from his brain to his foot. "Move," he thought, not just in his head but in his heart. "Please move." For a second nothing happened, then Kayla gasped. "Leo," she breathed, "do it again." He opened his eyes confused. "Again what?" "Whatever you just did," she said. Her eyes were locked on his foot. "I saw something." His heart leaped. He closed his eyes again, focusing on that same toe, that same invisible wire. "Move," he begged in his mind. "Just a little, show me you're there." This time he felt it, the smallest flicker, like a muscle waking up from a long sleep. It wasn't much. Anyone else might have missed it, but to him it was an earthquake. "My foot," he whispered. "Kayla, I think I felt it." "I saw it," she replied, her voice shaking with joy. "It twitched just a tiny bit, but it did. You did that." His eyes filled with tears again, but they were different this time. Not just pain, something brighter mixed in. "So they were wrong," he said, almost afraid to believe it. "All those reports that said nothing could change you, they were wrong." "Or they didn't want to look closer," she said, "but your body doesn't lie." Before they could say more, the garden door slid open and the nurse walked back out holding a jacket. "Oh, you're here," she said to Kayla, surprised. "You shouldn't distract him too much during rest time." "I was just saying hi," Kayla replied quickly, stepping back. The nurse draped the jacket over Leo's shoulders and began to adjust his chair, checking a small white pillbox on his lap. "Time for your midday tablets," she said. "You know the rules, Leo, no skipping." "What are those for again?" Kayla asked, her curiosity waking up. The nurse gave her a quick look. "Muscle comfort and nerve pain," she answered. "The doctor prescribed them years ago. They keep his body from stressing too much." Kayla's eyes dropped to the label on the small bottle as the nurse tipped a pill into Leo's hand. The print was tiny, but one word near the bottom caught her eye. "Side effects. Weakness, reduced muscle response." The rest of the letters blurred as the nurse moved the bottle away. Weakness, reduced muscle response. A cold thought slid into her mind. What if these pills meant to comfort him were also keeping his muscles quiet? What if they were part of the reason nothing ever changed? "Do you take these every day?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Twice a day," the nurse said. "Sometimes 3 times if he's restless. Orders from the specialist and Mrs. Reed. Now run along, dear. I'm sure your mother needs you." Kayla walked away slowly, her mind racing. Reports that were changed, pills that made muscles weak, a grandmother who wanted no hope, a boy whose toe had just moved for the first time because he believed he could. That night, while Rosa finished washing dishes in the kitchen, Kayla slipped quietly back to the main house. Her heart thudded as she crept down the hall to the small room where the nurse kept medical supplies. The door was slightly open. Inside, shelves held bandages, bottles, and small boxes. On the middle shelf, she saw it, the same pill bottle with Leo's name on it. She stepped inside, her fingers trembling as she reached for it. If she could read the whole label, maybe she could understand what they were really giving him. Maybe she could show it to someone else, someone who cared more about truth than money. Her hand closed around the bottle just as a shadow fell across the doorway. "Well," a cold, familiar voice said behind her, each word sharp as glass. "What exactly do you think you're doing in here with my grandson's medicine?" Kayla froze, the pill bottle still in her hand, as she slowly turned to see Madam standing in the doorway, her eyes fixed not on the bottle, but on the little girl who dared to touch the one thing that could expose the secret she'd buried for years. Madam stood in the doorway like a shadow, one hand on the frame, her eyes locked on the pill bottle in Kayla's shaking hand. For a moment no one spoke. The small room with its shelves of bandages and quiet machines felt like it had stopped breathing. The smell of rubbing alcohol and cotton hung in the air. Kayla's fingers tightened around the plastic without meaning to. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Madam took one slow step inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded louder than a slam. "Put that back," she said calmly, but there was something dangerous under her calm, like a knife beneath a silk cloth. Kayla swallowed hard and gently set the bottle back on the shelf, making sure it didn't make a sound. I was just looking," she whispered. "I wasn't going to take it." Madam walked closer, her heels tapping softly against the tile. "This is not a playground," she said. "You do just look at other people's medicine. You are not allowed in this room without permission. You know that, don't you?" Kayla nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. I was helping with cleaning and I—" "Don't lie to me," Madam cut in, her eyes sharp. "There is a cleaner for this room. You were not sent here. You came on your own because of my grandson." The way she said "my grandson" made Kayla's stomach twist. She felt the word like a chain. I just wanted to read the label," Kayla admitted, her voice small. "The nurse said they give him these pills twice a day. It said something about weakness and his muscles and I—" Madam held up a hand and Kayla's words died in her throat. "You think you can understand words meant for doctors?" Madam asked softly. "You think because you can read a few lines you suddenly know more than the people paid to take care of him?" Her mouth curved into a cold smile. "You've been wandering where you don't belong, haven't you?" Kayla's chest tight. She thought of the folder in the study, the phone call under the desk, the garden, Leo's tiny toe moving, Jackson's shocked face. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she whispered. I just want him to have a chance, that's all." Madam's eyes narrowed. "What do you know about his chance?" she asked, her voice dropping lower. What have you seen? The room suddenly felt too small. Kayla knew this was the moment where she could pretend she knew nothing, where she could apologize, cry, and maybe Madam would just scare her and let her go. But she also knew this was the same woman who had asked a doctor to bury hope in a folder. If she lied now, the lies would stack on top of each other, taller and taller, until they crushed Leo for good. Her hands shook, but she stood a little straighter. I saw the first report, she said quietly. The one from when he was born. It said his legs worked. It said there was no sign of paralysis. I heard you tell the doctor to change the reports later so his dad would think there was no hope. Madam's eyes darkened, but she did not deny it. And who told you to go through private medical files? She asked. Who told you to hide under desks and listen to calls between adults? No one, Kayla replied. No one had to. The truth was shouting even when everyone pretended it was quiet. Her voice wobbled, but she kept going. It's wrong, ma'am. He's a little boy. He cries at night when he thinks no one hears. He wants to run, you know that. Why would you keep this from him, from his dad? Madam took another step closer until they were only a small breath apart. Up close, Kayla could see the fine lines around her eyes, hear the slow, controlled way she breathed. You are a child of a maid, Madam said quietly. You live here because I allow it. You eat because I pay your mother. You go to school because this house gives her a salary. You have mistaken this kindness for a right. It is not a right. It is a gift that can be taken back. The words hit like cold water. Kayla bit her lip, feeling tears burn but refusing to let them fall. Madam watched her carefully. You will forget whatever you think you heard, she continued. You will stay away from my grandson. No more secret meetings in the garden. No more whispering. No more questions about his medicine. If I hear one more word about reports or hope from your mouth, you and your mother will be outside these gates before the sun rises. Do you understand? The threat wrapped around Kayla like a rope. She pictured their small room, their few bags, her mother's tired smile when she brought home a little snack, the way Rosa hummed quietly at night so Kayla would sleep better. If they were thrown out, where would they go? Back to the crowded street where people shouted and pushed and no one cared if you ate? Back to begging her mom to rest even when she worked 2 jobs. But then another picture pushed in front, Leo's eyes filling with tears when she told him he might have a chance, the tiny twitch in his toes when he tried to move them, the way he looked at his legs like they were waking up. So he just stays in the chair forever, Kayla whispered, voice breaking. So he never even gets to try because you're scared of your son spending money? That's not fair. Madam's jaw clenched. Fairness is a word poor people love, she said. Life is not fair. Life is survival. Your mother understands that. I suggest you learn it too. The door opened suddenly and the nurse walked in holding a small notebook. She stopped when she saw Madam and Kayla facing each other, tension thick in the air. Oh, the nurse said carefully. I didn't realize you were in here, ma'am. I was just coming to update Leo's chart. Madam's face smoothed over in an instant, the sharp anger hidden behind a polite smile. We were just talking, she said lightly. The girl was curious about the medicine. I explained that it is not a toy. She turned back to Kayla, her smile fading only in her eyes. Return to the staff area, she said. Your mother is looking for you. Kayla nodded slowly and slipped out, feeling Madam's gaze on her back like a weight. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes for a second, her whole body shaking. She felt small and weak and scared, but under all that fear was something else, a quiet, stubborn flame that refused to go out. Madam could threaten her job, her room, her safety, but she could not untwitch Leo's toe. She could not erase the words normal nerve response from that report. The truth existed even if she tried to bury it. Downstairs, Rosa was folding napkins in the dining room when she saw her daughter walking toward her with red eyes and tight shoulders. What happened? Rosa whispered, dropping the napkin and pulling Kayla into the empty side of the room. Did someone hurt you? Did they shout at you? Kayla shook her head, but tears spilled over anyway. She told her mother everything, Madam in the medicine room, the threat, the warning. The cold way she talked about gifts that could be taken back. Rosa listened, her face growing paler with each word. I told you, Rosa said softly when Kayla finished. I told you she wouldn't let the truth come out without a fight. So what do we do? Kayla asked, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Just keep quiet and watch him stay in that chair forever. Rosa looked down at her hands, at the small scars from years of scrubbing and lifting and cooking. When you were little, she said slowly, I used to pray every night for a door to open. Just one door that would give us safety and food and a chance for you to go to school. When this job came, I thought that door had finally opened. I told myself we would be grateful and careful and never do anything to make it close. She looked up, her eyes shining. But maybe I forgot something. Maybe I forgot that God doesn't open doors so we can hide behind them and ignore other people's pain. Maybe he put us in this house for more than just a roof over our heads. Kayla sniffed. You mean maybe we're here to help Leo? Maybe, Rosa whispered. Or maybe we're just here to tell the truth when everyone else is too scared. I don't know, I'm just a tired woman who cleans floors, but I know I can't tell you to lie to a little boy who trusts you. I won't do that, not even to keep this job. The words hung between them heavy and holy. Kayla felt something loosen in her chest, but the fear was still there. Madam said she'd throw us out, she reminded her mom. What if she does? Then we will leave with our heads up, Rosa said quietly. We lived without this mansion before, we can live without it again, but if we stay and help her keep this secret, it will follow us everywhere. It will sit at our table, sleep in our room, stand between us and God. I can't carry that. Later that evening, while the house hummed with the quiet sounds of dinner being prepared and staff moving like shadows, Jackson sat alone in his study again. The drawer with Leo's folder felt like a burning coal under his hand. He had waited all day for a moment when the house was calm, when he could open it without Madam walking in. Now he slid the drawer out slowly, took the folder, and spread the papers across his desk. He read every line, every date, every note in the margin. The first report made his hands shake, no sign of paralysis. The second report, written weeks later, painted a completely different picture. No leg reflexes, condition likely permanent. Then there were the small comments in the margins, almost hidden. Adjust wording per request. Family prefers no treatment options mentioned. He could see his mother's hand all over it, even if her name wasn't writ. His phone lay on the desk beside the papers. He stared at it for a long moment, then picked it up. With careful fingers, he took photos of the first report and a few of the notes that mentioned adjusting things. He sent them to a number he hadn't dialed in years. A neurologist he had met at a charity event once, someone outside his mother's circle, someone who had no reason to protect the Reed family story. He added a short message. Old reports about my son. Please look at these and tell me what you see. Be honest. I pay for truth, not comfort. He put the phone down, his heart thudding. He knew it might take a while for the doctor to reply. But for the first time in years, he felt like he had taken a step forward instead of around in circles. Upstairs in his bedroom, Leo stared at the ceiling, his hands folded on his stomach. The nurse had left after turning off the lamp near his bed. The room was dark except for the soft glow of the nightlight. He could still feel it, the memory of his toe moving in the garden. It had been such a tiny thing, invisible to anyone who wasn't looking. But Kayla had seen it, he had felt it. The feeling replayed in his mind over and over like a clip from his favorite cartoon. You weren't born this way, he whispered into the dark. You were. The thought scared him. It meant someone had lied to him his whole life, someone he trusted. But it also lit something inside him. If there had been a time when his legs worked, then maybe they weren't as broken as he was told. Maybe they were just asleep, very, very deeply asleep. He closed his eyes and tried again. He pictured his right foot, the one that had twitched. He sent all his focus down from his head, through his chest, through his stomach, all the way to his toes. Move, he asked silently, just a little. For a long time nothing happened. Then so small he almost thought he imagined it. He felt the skin on the bottom of his foot brush against the sheet. His breath caught, tears filled his eyes. Thank you, he whispered, his voice cracking. If this is real, if you're really doing something, don't stop, please don't stop. He didn't know if he was talking to God or to his own body or to both. He just knew he wasn't alone in that moment. Some unseen hope was with him in the dark. The next morning, the whole house seemed a little more tense. The guards stood a bit straighter at the gate. The staff whispered more quietly in the kitchen. Madam walked through the halls like a storm cloud in pearls. She called Rosa to the small sitting room near the front of the house. Rosa wiped her hands on her apron and went, heart pounding. She found Madam sitting in an armchair, a folder on her lap, her expression calm but cold. Sit, Madam said, pointing to the edge of the couch. Rosa sat, folding her hands in her lap. We need to talk about your daughter, Madam began. She has been wandering into rooms she should never enter, the study, the medical supply room. She has been asking questions, touching private files, looking at medicine that is none of her concern. She opened the folder and slid a paper toward Rosa. It wasn't a report, it was a printed document filled with small writing. This is a notice of termination, Madam said. You will sign it. You and your daughter will be paid for this month and given a small bonus. In return, you will leave quietly and never speak about anything you think you have seen here. Rosa's fingers trembled as she picked up the paper. It felt heavier than it looked. "Ma'am," she said softly, "please, we are sorry if she broke your rules. She is only a child. She just wanted to help your grandson." "Help," Madam repeated, an edge creeping into her voice. "Do you call it help when a girl plants disobedience in a sick boy's heart, when she fills his head with ideas that will only lead to disappointment?" "She didn't fill his head," Rosa replied, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "The truth did that, the truth about his legs, about his reports, about his medicine." She hesitated, then met Madam's eyes. "About you." For a split second, Madam's mask slipped. Her eyes flashed with something like fear and rage combined. "You think you know what you're talking about?" she asked slowly. "You think a cleaning woman and her curious child understand what it takes to protect an empire, to keep a company in one piece while a son falls apart in a hospital?" Rosa's heart twisted. "No," she said. "I don't understand empires, I don't understand companies, but I understand children. I understand what it feels like to stand in a hallway and be told there's no room for someone you love. I watched my father die because a hospital cared more about who could pay. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to keep another child from being hurt by money, I would take it." Her voice broke. "Leo is not a business, he's a boy." Madam leaned forward, her eyes hard. "You will sign the papers," she said through clenched teeth. "If you don't, I will not only fire you, I will make sure no house, no hotel, no company in the city hires you. I will call every manager, every owner I know. You will not be able to feed your daughter without begging." She sat back and smoothed her skirt. "Think carefully, Rosa. Is a little boy who isn't even yours worth your child going hungry?" Rosa looked down at the paper again. It wavered in her hands because they were shaking so badly. She thought of Kayla's thin shoulders, her school uniform, her laughter. She thought of nights counting coins carefully, praying it would be enough. Then she thought of Leo's eyes when he looked at the other kids playing on the TV, the way he touched his useless legs like he was apologizing to them. Her heart felt like it was being pulled in two directions. The door suddenly shifted. It hadn't closed fully and now it creaked a little more open. In the hallway, small wheels squeaked against the floor. Leo had been on his way to the library with the nurse when he heard voices. "Just a minute," he had told the nurse, asking her to wait at the end of the hall. He rolled closer, the door hiding his small figure. He heard enough. Words like termination, leave quietly, reports, little boy. His stomach knotted. Rosa didn't know he was there. She stared at the paper, her eyes filled with tears. "I can't sign this," she whispered. "I will not sell my silence, not even for my child's comfort. I am sorry, ma'am, do what you must." Madam's face turned to stone. "Very well," she said coldly. "You have chosen. Do not say I left you without options." She stood and walked past Rosa, her perfume trailing behind her like a line. In the doorway, she almost bumped into Leo's chair. Her eyes widened for a second, then narrowed. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. Leo lifted his chin. "I was going to the library," he replied. "I heard you talking. You're sending them away." "This is not your concern," Madam said quickly. "You are a child. You don't understand what is happening." "I understand more than you think," he said quietly. "I know they know something about me, about my legs. I know you don't want them here anymore because of that." Madam's jaw tightened. "You are confused," she said. "Your mind is fragile because of your condition. That girl has been telling you stories. I am protecting you from chaos." "Protecting me?" His voice cracked. "By making sure I never find out I might have a chance." Her lips thinned. "Go to the library," she ordered. "We will talk later when you have calmed down." She pushed his chair toward the nurse, who grabbed the handles, confused and a little scared. Leo looked back over his shoulder as they rolled away. Through the half-open door, he saw Rosa sitting with her hands over her face. His heartbeat pounded in his ears like drums. The quiet, polite world of his house was breaking apart in front of him, and he felt both terrified and strangely awake. That evening, when the house had quieted and most of the lights were low, Kayla sat on the edge of their small bed, clutching her school bag. On the floor near the door stood two worn suitcases. Rosa had packed their clothes in silence. Every folded shirt felt like a goodbye. "So that's it?" Kayla asked in a small voice. "We just leave." "They gave us until tomorrow morning," Rosa said softly. "We'll be gone before breakfast. They think leaving in the dark is neater." She tried to smile, but it came out twisted. At least she paid us enough to rent a room for a few weeks. That's more than some people get. It feels like being paid to disappear, Kayla whispered. Rosa looked at her daughter, her heart breaking. We did what we could, she said gently. We told the truth to the boy and to his father. We didn't pretend. Sometimes that's all poor people can do. The rest is in God's hands now. It's not enough, Kayla said, shaking her head. What if they still convince his dad that nothing can change? What if he keeps taking those pills? What if he tries to move his legs and thinks he's crazy because no one believes him? She pressed her fists against her eyes. We can't just walk out like nothing happened. Rosa was quiet for a long moment, then she reached into her pocket and took out a small notebook and a pen. Then don't, she said, write it down. Kayla blinked. Write what? Everything, Rosa said. Write what you heard, what you saw, what you know. You may not be able to stand in front of them and shout it, but you can leave it where the right eyes might find it. The truth is heavy when it sits in one heart. Share it with another. Kayla took the notebook. Her hands shook as she opened it to a blank page. She pressed the pen down and started to write in careful, simple words. She wrote about the folder in the study, about the first report, about the phone call under the desk, about the medicine bottle and the word weakness on the label, about Madam's threats, about the tiny movement in Leo's toes. Tears fell onto the paper, leaving small wet circles, but she kept going until her hand hurt and the page was full. Then she tore it out carefully and folded it in half. Who do I give it to? She asked. Rosa thought for a moment. Your friend, she said. The one this is about. He deserves to see it with his own eyes, but you'll have to be careful. You can't hand it to him in front of everyone. Kayla nodded slowly, the start of a plan forming in her mind. That night, when the house was finally still and only the night guards moved quietly outside, she waited until her mother's breathing became deep and slow. Then she slipped out of bed, pulled on her sweater, and opened their door as softly as she could. The hallway to the main house felt longer in the dark. Shadows stretched like long fingers across the floor. She knew where Leo's room was. She had walked that path many times in her head, up the service stairs, past the big painting of the Reed family, down the soft carpeted hall. When she reached his door, her heart was beating so fast it felt like a drum inside her chest. She pressed her ear to the wood. She could hear the faint, steady sound of his breathing. Very slowly, she slid the folded page under the door until only a corner showed. Then she whispered, even though she knew he probably couldn't hear, "This is for you. Don't let them tell you your body is lying." She stayed there for a few seconds, pressing her fingers against the bottom of the door as if she could send courage through it. Then she turned and walked back, her bare feet silent on the carpet. What she didn't know was that Leo was not fully asleep. His body was tired, but his mind was wide awake, buzzing with questions and half-formed hopes. He heard a soft rustle near the door and opened his eyes. At first he thought he imagined it. Then he saw the small white edge of paper sticking under the wood. His heart leaped. He pushed himself up a little and reached down, his arms straining. The wheelchair sat beside the bed, but he had insisted on sleeping in the bed tonight, wanting to feel more normal before he had to say goodbye to the one friend he trusted. It took all his strength to slide closer to the edge, stretch his arm down, and grab the paper. For a moment he thought he might slip off the bed, but his fingers closed around the page just in time. He pulled it up and rolled onto his back, breathing hard. He unfolded it and began to read. The handwriting was a little messy but clear. With each line his eyes grew wider. She had written everything. The call, the reports, the pills, the threats, the tiny toe movement. Every piece of the puzzle he hadn't known how to name was there in plain words. By the time he reached the end, his hands were shaking so badly he could hardly hold the paper. "They lied to me," he whispered into the darkness, "all this time." A mix of anger and hurt and strange energy shot through him. He looked at his wheelchair. He looked at the door. He thought of his father downstairs somewhere, alone with papers and numbers, and maybe still believing his mother's calm voice over anything else. "I have to show him," Leo said to himself. "I have to." The thought terrified him. He had never moved around the house without someone pushing his chair. The idea of getting from his bed into the chair by himself felt impossible. But he looked down at his legs and for the first time did not see useless weight. He saw something that had been tricked and numbed and pushed down, not something that was completely gone. He took a deep breath and swung his upper body sideways. His legs flopped uselessly at first, but he didn't stop. He grabbed the wheelchair's armrest and pulled. His arms shook, his shoulders burned, but slowly, painfully, he slid his body to the edge of the bed. One leg slid off first, then the other. His feet touched the floor. It was a strange feeling, distant but real, like pressing your hand on something through a glove. "Please," he whispered, not sure if he was talking to God, his legs, or both. "Just a little more." He pushed with his arms and tried to lean forward. For a second he was half standing, half falling. His knees trembled. The muscles in his thighs buzzed, weak but alive. It lasted only a moment before they buckled and he collapsed into the chair, his chest hitting the armrest hard. The pain shot through him, but he didn't cry out. He was too shocked. His legs had carried a tiny piece of his weight for a second. It wasn't much. It wasn't a run or a walk or even a full stand, but it was more than nothing. It was more than born this way forever. Breathing fast, he pulled himself fully into the chair and settled against the back. His hands were sweating, his heart racing, but his eyes glowed with something fierce. He tucked the letter into the pocket of his pajama pants, unlocked the brakes on his chair, and pushed himself toward the door. His arms had never worked so hard in his life. Outside his room, the hallway was dim and quiet. The house felt like it was holding its breath. He knew his father sometimes worked late in the study downstairs. If he could get there, if he could put the letter right into his hands, maybe everything would finally break open. Maybe they could stop being careful and start being honest. He rolled forward, his wheels squeaking softly on the carpet. At the top of the stairs he paused. Going down in a wheelchair without someone pushing was dangerous. He could fall. He could get hurt badly. But the idea of waiting until morning and hopping no one found the letter first felt worse. He gripped the wheels and slowly turned toward the small service elevator at the end of the hall, the one the staff used to move laundry and cleaning carts. He had never used it alone before, but he had watched enough times to know which buttons to push. He reached the elevator and pressed the call button. It rattled and hummed before the doors slid open. He wheeled himself inside and hit the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, his reflection stared back at him from the dull metal, pale face, messy hair, eyes full of fear and something that looked a lot like bravery. When the doors opened again, he pushed himself out into the quiet corridor just a few steps away from his father's study. A sliver of light shone under the study door. His father was still awake. Leo rolled forward, his hands trembling on the wheels. Just as he reached out to knock, a shadow moved across the light. The door swung open from the inside. Standing there in the doorway with the old reports on the desk behind her and the cold look of control back on her face was Madame. She froze when she saw him alone in the hall in his wheelchair, breathless and shaking, a folded letter bulging from his pocket. "What are you doing out of your room at this hour?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "And how did you get down here by yourself?" Leo's heart slammed against his ribs. Behind her he could see movement, his father turning in his chair, surprised by her raised voice. The moment he had hoped for, the chance to put the truth in his father's hands, was now trapped between the one person who wanted to bury it and the one person who needed to see it. Madame's voice cut through the quiet hallway like a sharp knife as she stared down at Leo in his wheelchair, alone in the dim light with his hair messy, his chest rising and falling fast, and his small hands gripping the wheels so hard his knuckles had turned white. And for a second, the three worlds in that big house collided in one tiny space. The world of power standing in the doorway, the world of papers and secrets lying on the desk behind her, and the world of a 7-year-old boy who had just found out that his whole life might have been built on a lie. And Leo felt all of it pressing on him as Madame demanded to know why he was out of his room and how he had got downstairs by himself. But before he could answer, his father's voice drifted out from inside the study, calm but tired, calling, "Mother, who are you talking to?" And then Jackson appeared behind her with his tie loose, and worry already forming on his face when he saw his son's chair in the doorway at this late hour. And in that moment Leo knew he had no more time to be scared. So he pushed his wheels forward, nudging the chair past his grandmother's body even though she tried to block him with a stiff arm, and his voice shook but did not break as he said, "Dad, I need to talk to you right now, and I need Grandma to hear it too." And those words were so unusual coming from his quiet son that Jackson's whole body froze, then slowly moved aside to let the chair roll into the study while Madame followed close behind, her eyes hard and bright. And when the door clicked shut, the big, silent room suddenly felt like a courtroom where truth had finally been called to stand in the light. Leo stopped in the middle of the room, feeling the weight of the folded page Kayla had written pressing against his leg from inside his pocket, and his heart thumped so loud he could hear it echo in his ears as his father stepped closer and knelt a little so their faces were level, asking gently, "Buddy, what are you doing down here? Why aren't you in bed? What's going on?" And Leo looked into his father's eyes and saw tired love there, real and raw. And that gave him the courage to reach into his pocket with shaking fingers, pull out the folded paper and hold it out with both hands as he said, "Because I found out something about my legs and I can't sleep knowing you don't know the truth." And Jackson's mouth parted in surprise as he took the paper and slowly opened it while Madam watched with her arms crossed tight, trying to look calm but failing as a small muscle in her jaw twitched. The study grew so quiet that even the ticking of the wall clock sounded loud as Jackson's eyes moved across the page, reading the simple, shaky writing of an 8-year-old girl who had seen too much. And with each line his face changed, his brows pulling together, his shoulders tensing, his hand tightening around the thin sheet. The words talked about the first report that said no sign of paralysis, about the secret phone call asking the doctor to change things, about the pills that caused weakness, about the threat to throw Rosa and Kayla out if they didn't stay silent, and about the little twitch in his son's toes that no one had believed could be real. And when he reached the end, his hand dropped to his side, the paper still clutched in his fist, and he turned his head slowly to look at his mother. And for the first time since he was a boy, there was no fear, no soft begging in his eyes, only a deep, shaking anger wrapped in heartbreak as he said in a hoarse voice, "Is this true?" Madam opened her mouth with a well-practiced reply, but Leo spoke first, his small voice cutting through the room as he blurted, "It is Dad. I felt my toe move when I was with Kayla. And when I tried again tonight, my legs helped me stand for a second, just a second, but they did, they're not dead like they said. I crawled into my chair all by myself. I used my legs a little, and I came down here because I need you to believe me, not her reports." And his words rushed out like a river that had been held back for years behind a dam of lies. And Jackson stared at him as if seeing him for the first time, seeing not just the wheelchair but the fight in his son's face, the fire in his eyes, and then he turned back to Madam, his voice quiet but shaking with controlled rage as he repeated, "Is this true?" For the first time in a long time, Madam did not have an easy answer ready. Her lips parted, then closed again, and she tried to stand taller, wrapping herself in her old excuses as she said, "You are letting the words of a staff child and the emotions of a sick boy confuse you, Jackson. You know how grief makes your mind play tricks. I did what I had to do to keep this family from falling apart. Those early tests were unclear, we didn't know what they meant, and you were breaking down in that hospital begging for miracles. Someone had to be the strong one. Someone had to protect the company when you couldn't even stand." And her words came faster and sharper as she went on, painting herself as the hero in her own story, the one who held everything together while he wept. But every sentence she spoke only made the room feel colder, and Jackson's eyes grew darker because he could handle mistakes, he could handle being wrong, but he could not handle knowing that while he sat up at night worrying about his son, someone had quietly chosen what kind of pain that son was allowed to feel. Leo gripped the armrest so hard his small fingers hurt, but he refused to look away as he added, "Grandma, you told me the doctors did everything they could. You told me to accept that nothing would change. You told me God wanted me this way so Dad would stay strong, but that was God, that was you. You decided I should never even try." And that simple truth, spoken in the quiet, honest voice of a child, landed harder than any lawyer's argument could have. Madam flinched as if slapped, her eyes flashing not just with anger now, but with something like fear and even shame, but she still tried to hold her ground as she replied, "I decided what was best for all of us. You are a child, you don't know what your father was like back then. He was ready to throw away everything, every dollar, every share, chasing doctors who smiled and took his money while saying big words that meant nothing. He would have bankrupted this family. He would have lost you a safe, comfortable life for a tiny, tiny chance they dangled in front of him like a trick. I stopped that. I took the weight so he could breathe. Everything you have is because I made the hard choice." But Jackson shook his head slowly, his voice low and rough as he said, "No, Mother, everything we have is because I worked, because I stayed up, because I pushed through meetings while my heart was breaking. And I did it all thinking there was nothing else I could do for my son, that this chair was his fate, that all I could offer him was comfort, and you took away the one thing that might have made the pain bearable, The chance to try, the chance to hope. You didn't protect me, you trapped me, and you trapped him. Silence dropped heavy between them, but it was not an empty silence. It was full of years of swallowed words, of nights when Leo cried quietly, of days when Rosa hummed in the staff room and prayed, of all the times Kayla had watched from doorways with her young heart burning for what was right. And for a long second no one spoke, while the clock ticked and the soft night wind brushed against the windows, and then another sound broke through. The soft buzz of Jackson's phone where it lay on the desk behind him, and that tiny vibration felt like a small knock from outside their old story, a call from the world beyond Madam's control. And Jackson turned, picked up the phone with trembling fingers, and saw a message from the neurologist he had contacted the night before, the one outside the family circle, and his eyes moved quickly over the doctor's words. "I've reviewed the images you sent. The first report clearly shows normal nerve response. Later reports suggest decline not at birth but over time. There is no medical reason to conclude permanent and total paralysis. With proper therapy and adjusted medication, your son may gain more function. I recommend urgent review of current drug regimen. Some drugs listed can suppress muscle activity if overused." Jackson read it once, then again, and when he looked up his face was pale but set, like someone who had finally walked through a door he had been afraid even to touch. And he held the phone out so Madam could see the message with her own eyes, saying quietly, "This is from a doctor you don't pay, someone you don't control, and he says my son is not what those reports turned him into. He says the pills you approved might be part of what's holding him down, and whatever you think you were doing. Whatever you tell yourself at night, this ends now." Madam stared at the screen, the smooth letters reflecting in her pupils, and for the first time the mask on her face cracked all the way through. Behind the hard shell was a scared old woman who had once been a scared young mother, and a broken whisper slipped out before she could stop it as she said, "He was so small, Jackson, you were so broken. When the first doctor told us we didn't need to worry, I believed him. And then the next one said we were wrong. He said your boy might lose his legs. He told me horror stories. He told me about fathers like you who lost everything chasing special clinics. He showed me families who sold their houses and still buried their children, and I looked at you crying and I thought, if I let hope loose in his heart, it will destroy him, it will destroy everything. So I pushed it down. I thought one fixed pain was better than 1,000 new ones. I told myself a rich boy in a chair was better off than a poor boy in a grave. And maybe at first it was fear, not money, that pushed me. But then the years passed and the company grew. And it became easier to tell myself that no news was good news, that if we never looked again, we'd never have to face another doctor saying no. And I did not see that the no I made was worse. I did not see I was crushing his chance every day." And tears finally spilled down her cheeks, the same cheeks that had always stayed dry when she watched her son break, and Leo's heart twisted because part of him wanted to hate her. But another part, the softer one that still remembered her tucking his blanket in at night and buying him his favorite toy car, could see that even monsters in a story sometimes started as people who were just terrified. But the truth that she was afraid did not erase the truth that she had done real harm, and Jackson knew that, so he stepped closer and said in a voice that shook but did not bend, "I believe that you thought you were protecting us, but your fear built a prison for my son, and love that cages someone is not love at all. It is control, so from this moment you are no longer in charge of his doctors, his reports, his pills, or his future. You will not speak to his nurses alone. You will not sign anything related to his care, and you will not decide which truths I can handle. That is over." And the firmness in his tone made it clear there would be no going back, and Madame flinched like someone had pulled a crown off her head. She opened her mouth to argue, to remind him of all the things she had done for the company, for the house, for him, but the words died when she looked at Leo's face. His hazel eyes were shining with tears and something steadier, a quiet strength she had underestimated, and he said softly, "I don't know if I can forgive you today, Grandma, maybe one day, but not right now. I need space to try to get my legs back without your fear tying them down." And that simple sentence hurt more than any angry shout could have, because it came from a boy who still loved her but needed to step away to heal. Jackson put a hand on his son's shoulder and squeezed lightly. "I'm calling a new doctor in the morning," he said. "One who doesn't owe us anything. We'll review every pill, every file, every test. We will give your body a real chance, no matter how long it takes, and if at the end of it all you still can't walk, at least we'll know we tried everything honestly, without lies, without fear hiding in the reports." Leo nodded, tears sliding quietly down his face, but his chest felt lighter than it had in years, because for the first time he didn't feel like a broken object being pushed from room to room. He felt like a person whose voice mattered in his own story. The next day, the house that usually moved with quiet, smooth routines felt different, like someone had opened a window and let real air in for the first time in a long time. The new neurologist arrived in simple clothes with kind eyes and no fancy suitcase, and he spent more time talking to Leo than to the adults, asking him what he felt, what he dreamed of, what he believed, and he listened seriously when Leo said, "Sometimes my legs tingle at night. Sometimes I feel like I could move them if I tried long enough." And instead of patting his shoulder and changing the subject, the doctor nodded slowly and said, "Then that's where we'll start." And when he saw the list of medicines Leo had been taking for years, he frowned and circled a few names, quietly explaining to Jackson that these pills, especially in high doses, could keep muscles sleepy, and that they might have been helpful at first but could be holding him back now. So together they made a plan to slowly reduce them under careful watch and to start gentle exercises, not just for the arms but for the legs too, exercises that would make the nerves remember that they were not dead, only muted. In the staff quarters, Rosa and Kayla stood by their packed bags, ready to leave when the car came to take them away, each holding a piece of their small life in their hands, when suddenly there was a knock on their door and Rosa's heart clenched, thinking it was security coming to rush them out. But when she opened it, she found not a guard, not Madam, but Jackson himself standing there in a simple shirt with dark circles under his eyes and the folded termination paper in his hand, and behind him, to their surprise, was Leo in his wheelchair, awake and alert, his hands resting on the wheels like he had not been pushed all the way there but had helped himself along the hallway. Jackson looked at them with a mixture of shame and gratitude and said, "I read your note, Kayla, and I read my son's reports, and I spoke to a new doctor, and now I know the truth, and I came to say two things. First, thank you for having the courage to see what I refused to see, and second, you are not leaving this house unless it's through the front door as guests or as family friends, not as people thrown away for telling the truth." And he tore the termination paper neatly in half, then into smaller pieces, letting them fall into the trash bin by the door. Rosa's knees almost gave out with relief and shock, and she grabbed the doorframe to steady herself, tears spilling faster than she could wipe them, while Kayla stared at Leo, her heart bursting when she noticed the way he sat a bit different, like he trusted his body an inch more than before. And Leo smiled at her, a real bright smile that reached his eyes, and said, "You were right, Kayla, they did lay, but my legs are not done yet. I felt them again last night, stronger than before. And Dad is going to help me now for real." And Kayla laughed through her tears, the sound shaky but full of joy, telling him, "I knew your body wasn't a liar, it was just waiting for someone to listen." Jackson cleared his throat, his voice thick, as he turned to Rosa and said, "I don't know how to make up for all the fear you've lived with under my roof, and I can't change the way my mother treated you, but I can change the way things go from here. If you still want this job, it's yours, but with better pay, more respect, and clear rules that protect you, not just us. And I also want to pay for Kayla's school all the way through, including the kind of school where teachers don't just tell her to be quiet when she asks big questions, because the world needs people like her who are brave enough to look under desks and behind doors." And Rosa covered her face as sobs of gratitude shook her body, while Kayla stood there almost frozen, feeling like a simple thank you would never be enough, but whispering it anyway. Time did not change overnight, and Leo did not jump out of his chair the next morning and run around the yard, because real healing is not a magic trick. It is a slow, daily fight, and there were days when he was tired, days when his legs refused to answer no matter how hard he tried, days when he cried and asked why it had to take so long. But now he had a team around him that cared more about truth than comfort. The new doctor who visited often, the physical therapist who made silly jokes while helping him lift his legs, his father who attended sessions whenever he could, sweating with him and cheering for every tiny movement, Rosa who snuck in encouraging songs while cleaning the exercise room, and Kayla who counted out loud with him during hard stretches and shouted, "Come on, Leo, one more, just one more," when he wanted to give up. And slowly, over weeks and then months, something beautiful began to happen. The pills that had kept his muscles dull were reduced and then changed. The heavy fog in his body lifted a little at a time, and his legs started to send clearer messages to his brain, messages that said, "We are here, And we remember, and with each session, the movements that were once invisible became small but clear. A curl of a toe, a tiny lift of the heel, a shaky bend of the knee. Madame watched all of this from a distance at first, sitting by her bedroom window as she saw the therapy car come and go, hearing distant laughter from the garden where Leo and Kayla sometimes practiced balancing with his hands on a rail, and guilt sat on her chest like a heavy stone, because every sign of progress was proof that she had been wrong, and pride wrestled with regret in her heart until the regret began to win, because there is only so long that a heart, even a hard one, can carry the knowledge that it chose control over a child's chance. And one afternoon, when the house was quiet and most of the staff were busy, she walked slowly to the therapy room where Leo was standing between parallel bars, his legs shaking, his face red with effort, his therapist beside him, his father just behind, ready to catch him if he slipped, and Kayla counting in a soft but excited voice, and Madame stood in the doorway unseen for a moment and watched her grandson drag one foot forward and then the other, making 3 unsteady steps before falling back onto the bench with a small cry that was half pain, half joy. And when he lifted his head and saw her there, his eyes widened and the room went silent. She could have turned away. She could have pretended she was just passing by, but there was a point where hiding became more painful than truth even for her, so she took a small breath and walked in, her hands shaking slightly as she gripped the back of a chair. And she said in a voice that had lost its sharp edge, 3 steps, and her lips trembled, "I never thought I'd see that, not because I didn't want it, but because I was too afraid to hope." And all the excuses she used to give sounded small and ugly to her own ears now. And she looked straight at Leo with eyes full of tears and said, "I am so sorry, my boy. I told myself I was saving your father and saving you, but I see now I was saving myself from fear, and I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I will spend the rest of my days trying to deserve even a little of that forgiveness." The room held its breath again, and everyone looked at Leo because this forgiveness was not anyone else's to give. And Leo sat there, his legs still tingling, his heart pounding, remembering the years of being told not to hope, remembering the shock of the letter, the weight of the secret, but also remembering the nights his grandmother sat by his bed when he was sick, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead, the way she whispered prayers when she thought he was asleep. And the way fear can twist love into something ugly without killing it. And after a long moment he said quietly, "I'm still angry, Grandma, and I think I will be for a while, but I also see that you're sorry, and my dad says when someone is truly sorry and willing to change, we can let God handle the punishment part, so I'm not ready to hug you yet, but I am ready to let you sit and watch me walk when I can, if you want to see what hope actually looks like when it stands up." And a small, shaky smile tugged at his mouth, and Madame nodded with tears rolling freely now, whispering, "I would like that very much." And in that simple exchange the house shifted, because even though the past could not be erased, it no longer had the power to decide the ending. Months passed, and the day finally came when the garden was filled with people, not for a party of rich partners, but for something quieter and more important. A small family gathering to celebrate Leo taking his first honest steps without holding the bars, and the sun was warm, the grass soft, and a path of flat stones had been laid from the back door to chair under the big tree where Madame sat with her hands folded tight, whispering prayers under her breath, while Rosa stood nearby with a proud smile, and Kayla bounced on her toes with excitement, and Jackson stood at the other end of the stones with open arms and eyes already shining. And the therapist and doctor watched from the side, their faces full of quiet joy, and Leo sat in his wheelchair at the start of the path, his legs wrapped in light supports, his hands resting on the armrests, his heart beating so hard he thought everyone could hear it, and he looked at the people around him, at the boy he used to be who only watched others run on screens. And then he looked up at the sky for a second and whispered, "Okay, God, here we go, one step with you, one with them, until we reach the end." And then he took a breath, grabbed the sides of his chair, and pushed himself up. His legs shook like branches in a storm, but they held. His knees trembled, but they did not drop, and he felt muscles that had been quiet for so long come alive and shout, "We remember." And he lifted his foot and placed it on the first stone, then the second, then the third, each step slow and wobbly but real. And with every move the people around him gasped and cried and whispered his name like a soft cheer. And Leo's eyes filled with tears of his own, but he did not stop, because this wasn't just about walking, it was about breaking an old story. When that said poor kids should stay quiet, that rich boys should accept pain without questions, that fear made the rules, and with each step that story cracked, until finally he reached his father, fell into his arms with a small laugh that was half sob, and heard Jackson whisper into his hair, you did it, I'm so proud of you. We're just getting started, buddy, but you did it." And when they pulled back, Leo turned to look at everyone, at Grandma, at Rosa, at Kayla. And he said in a shaky but joyful voice, "We did it, all of us, because sometimes it takes one poor little girl's courage, one father's broken heart, one mother's regret, and one boy's stubborn hope for the truth to stand up." Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned soft orange, they all sat under the tree together, and Jackson made an announcement that surprised everyone. He had decided to set up a fund in his company not just for fancy buildings or big projects, but to help children from poor homes get real medical help when they needed it, without lies and without money shutting the door in their faces, because he had learned the hard way that an empire built on fear and silence was weaker than one built on kindness and truth, and he wanted to use his money to open doors, not close them, and he promised that for every deal the company signed, a part of it would go to this new project, and he smiled at Kayla when he said, "And one day, when Kayla grows up, if she wants, there will be a place for her here to help run this work, because she's the one who reminded us that even the smallest voice can shake a very big house." Kayla blushed and hid her face in her hands, but her heart soared not because of the promise of a future job, but because she had proof now that poor girls could do more than just clean and stay quiet. They could see, they could speak, they could change lives, and Rosa squeezed her hand, whispering, "See, baby, God didn't put us here just for a roof. He put us here to turn on a light." Madame listened to all of this with tired but softer eyes, and she knew she could never undo what she had done, but she also knew that she could choose every day to be honest now, to support hope instead of choking it. And she leaned down to Leo, who was resting with his legs stretched out in front of him, tired from the big day, and she said, "You were stronger than all my fears, and I hope that as you grow you will remember that true strength is not in hiding from pain, but in facing it with love." And he nodded. Because he understood now that strength was not just about muscles waking up, it was also about hearts learning to tell the truth even when it hurt. As the night grew darker and the lights on the back porch flickered on, Leo looked up at the sky one more time, feeling the ache in his legs and the warmth of his family around him, and he knew his journey wasn't over. There would be more therapy, more hard days, more steps to fight for, but he also knew he would never again fight alone or in the dark, and deep inside he felt a quiet, steady peace, the kind that comes when truth finally has a place to sit down. And now, as you sit with this story, think about the lesson hidden inside this big glass mansion and the tiny staff room. That money without love is empty, that fear without truth is a prison, and that sometimes the smallest person in the room holds the key that sets everyone free. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't scroll away in silence. Take a second to hit the subscribe button to support our growth. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that hope may be slow, but it is never truly gone when someone is brave enough to speak the truth.